to start us off tonight. This is our proposed budget with everything else. The portrait of the graduate, which we know we've been over for a few budget rounds now, was a vision inspired by our community members that included parents, non-parents, our students, our staff, and our administration. We use this as our guiding star when we're building our budget or making decisions. Does it fit into our portrait of a grad? Does it fit into our strategic plan? These are our goals. We want to engage all students, supporting a culture of learning for all, and communicating with efficacy for equity. Windsor High School. There's a couple pictures up here. This is our recent trip to Costa Rica. This is Hudson, who's here and is a big part of moving our school forward in terms of extended learning opportunities and our flexible pathways, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about.
Wait, 1 second. I'm sorry. Where's Hudson? And Hudson is also a member of our school board. I'm sorry.
Hudson is a member of our school board.
I apologize, Hudson.
Sorry about that. And this is our Leader in Me team. These students are leaders in our school who are helping make this school a place where they want to be every day. This is part of our theater production, and then we know and we feel supported by the community always in our sports endeavors. So there's a couple up here. Our football team recently won the state championship. Our girls were just over here enjoying dinner because they're heading to Barry tomorrow. And also not on here is we have our 16,000 point scorer this year in Mason Fortin, who's a senior. Our boys are playing in Bellows Falls tonight. We love all the support we get with all the activities we do here for our kids. This up here you see is a link for our student interest survey. In terms of our budget for the high school, we have added no positions, we have added no money. It's actually come down. What our focus is we're focusing on having students be the drivers in their own education. We keep going in cycles. Some of you will remember 15 years ago here, we had a home ec had a section over here, stoves and cooking and all of that stuff. And we had so many students invest in that, and then we said, no, this is the way education is going. All of our students are college bound. Now we're back, right? We've come back around where a lot of our students are going into tech programs. They're looking to get into the job force after school. Our goal is to meet all learners where they're at, and we have what's known in the state of Vermont as Act 77, our flexible pathways. This puts students in the driver's seat of their own education. Hudson is an excellent example of that, and he came to this morning and he wants to put out a presentation for students and parents that will let them know the opportunities that they have. And they're endless. So we put out this student interest survey because typically we have our teachers plug in our classrooms and we say to the kids, here you go, pick the classrooms you want. But they can only pick the classrooms that we have that fit into their schedule. This year we put out this survey first, and we're going to get the feedback from the students. What is it that you're asking for? It's going to allow us to make small changes, which is the luxury of a small school. We can make small changes quickly that meet the needs of the students and hopefully increase the safety. One of those small changes we're making is in our language department, we're now going to offer American Sign Language as a language. We've had interest in that. We did get a teacher already on staff who said, I'd like to take that out of my classes. We have shifted we had kind of like homeroom when we were in high school. Did your homeroom, that was home base. We had that in the morning, and it worked as a credit bearing class across all three levels. What we've done in our schedule next year, what we're doing is we're moving that. We're shortening that from 15-minute class to a 30-minute class in the middle of the day. Our kids are saying, I want a break. I need a break during the day. I've shadowed a couple of them during their days. They do need a break. They're going from class, zero time to process. Instead of breaks being moved to the middle of the those classes are going to look like. We're also going to shift now where students can come in and they can take one class and we'll fulfill their math and science requirements. So we're using the same amount of staff. We're just getting feedback from the students to open up opportunities. If you have any questions, the link on that student interest survey is live. I ask you do not fill it out. But then if you're interested in what we're asking students, kind of where we're going, you're welcome to look at that. I'm going to turn it over to Sergio, who's going to walk us through the next part, and then we'll be available for questions.
Thanks, Kate. Wonderful to see all you all tonight. Thanks for coming out despite the weather. I'm going to take us through, so Kate started us off sort of 30,000 foot with our Portrait of a Graduate, which is really our North Star, what all of our work ties back to. I'm going to take us down a little bit of altitude into our strategic plan and how some of the work in our strategic plan ties to the things that we're doing here at school that we're really, really excited about. So thanks for coming out to hear all of this. And I'll try to read some of these and be loud at the same time. Yes? Absolutely. How's that? I think they're working on it. So our first major point of our strategic plan is student success and engagement. So making sure that we improve student learning experiences, because the personal, educational, vocational, and civic successes of our students are increasingly challenged in our rapidly changing world. Making sure that we want to prepare our students for today and tomorrow, and that we have to do these things, a robust learning framework and assessment systems and extended learning opportunities, some of which Kate described, to make sure that we are providing the best practice situated educational experience for our students. To make sure that we strengthen and broaden the connections between and among all staff and the core work of education in pursuit of greater staff engagement, well-being, innovation, inclusion, and resolve. That we are strengthening our school community and belonging and making sure that school is a safe and welcoming place for all of our students to thrive and learn and have agency in. So we're really excited about that. And information and communication. The Mount-Escutney will improve the quality and effectiveness of its two-way communication so that stakeholder, our community, our students, trust and understanding and support will continue to advance the education and opportunities for our students. I'm going to talk a little bit about the elementary school, and then I'll hand things over to Colleen DeChamp, who's in our middle school. Our elementary school is a really exciting place to be right now. We have a lot of things going on all at once. In many ways, it feels like after 3 years of COVID and pandemic that we're kind of getting back to some of the things that we've done for a long time, getting back to some traditions and making some new traditions. So we brought back an assembly series, welcoming our families back into the building, where we're celebrating all the work that goes on in our school every day. We're moving into our second full year of our Leader in Me initiative, where we're helping foster leadership and student agency and helping our students, even in K-5, lead our school and take us forward, which is really, really exciting. And we're getting back to doing lots of great things and having, again, our community in the building to help with all the things that go on in our schools. So we're really, really excited. Great. And of course, continuing the curriculum work that we have ongoing and creating better systems in our elementary school, which we're also really excited about. So, great place to be. It's very busy right now, but in all the best ways. Okay. Colleen?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Colleen DeChamp. I'm going to share with you the next level of what system we use here at our school that runs everything we do. It's our MTSS system. It stands for a multi-tiered system of supports. It has 5 components, and the first one is a systematic and comprehensive approach where we use universal supports in our classrooms, interventions, and focused unified curriculum blocks and interdisciplinary learning. With our universal supports, this is what we are offering to every one of our students. What we give everybody as a general instruction that everybody gets the needs that any student might have in the past gotten if they were on an IEP or on a specialized plan. We now have this system in place where all of our teachers are offering universal instructional pieces. Graphic organizers, not just a kid who is visually impaired, but we all get to use graphic organizers because we need them and it's best practice. Interventions, we've had teachers who now have availability in their schedule to be certified teachers to offer more strategic ELA intervention, more reading and writing specific instruction, math, science specific instruction, and we are lucky to have that built into our schedules, into our teams. We have focused unified curriculum blocks that are a little bit more specific of time chunks in our elementary school classes because our middle school and high school runs a little bit more on a schedule that shares periods and times that share staff across the building. So we have to have a little bit more strategic time constraints. But as you've heard before, we're looking at more flexible pathways and more extended learning opportunities I'll talk more about. But when we're talking about curriculum blocks, we're looking mostly at our elementary at big chunks of time for our ELA and math instructions so that it makes sense to our students. Interdisciplinary work where we're making connections to their math and science rather than keeping it separate, making real life connections. With effective collaboration, this is our team working together strategically across our whole SU. Our staff, our administrative staff, has worked to make sure we are collaborating and using common planning time as a team. We use our Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays after school every day in a strategic way. One day we're working on Leader in Me initiatives. Another day we're working specific on MTSS, the systems of support needs that our students have. Any day of the week can be an IEP meeting, a special education meeting, because we do those whenever they are needed. We have another day that is dedicated to collaborating with our teachers, with our teammates, cross grade levels, within departments. And that's what we're talking about when we have our common planning time with our teachers. Our professional learning comes down from our strategic plan. What do we focus on as an administrative team to make sure our teachers have what they need for the year? In this year, we were kicking off Leader in Me in a really strong way, and we wanted to make sure our teachers had that training and that professional development. We also have looked at some more self-guided professional development for our teachers, where there's choice for our teachers as well to choose the things that they want to become stronger at. And all adults are for all of our students. One of the pieces with our MTSS team is when I first started teaching here in 2002, we had a little bit more separation between regular education and special education. With our multi-tiered system of supports, we're all on the same team. We're all working very hard at that universal instruction level to make sure we say, hey, this young man is struggling, this young lady's having a hard time with this. How do we as a team help them and work on some instructional strategies before we kick it up a notch to a specialist? So when we say everybody's on board, all of the adults are on board, all the educators, whether they're special educators or regular educators, we're all in. High quality instruction and interventions. I already mentioned interventionists. Some of them are specifically in this role alone. Some are certified teachers who have ability in their schedule to team teach or work as an interventionist and give some double dosing to students who need it. We have instructional coaches in our SU and in our Nonoscutney School District, where we are adding one instructional coach to our budget line for the support of helping our teachers be stronger teachers as well. We have a partnership with the Mount Escutney Mentor Program, and we have our awesome special education department and team that works. Again, we are all teammates. I don't even like to see it like separated out there. I like it that we are all together. Comprehensive and balanced assessments. When we're looking at our assessments, we're looking at our daily formative assessments that are happening in the classrooms, teachers who are giving exit tickets and figuring out daily and weekly what does our student need for the next day. We're looking at every couple months some progress monitoring. We're looking at our state testing 3 times a year, our Track My Progress. All of these pieces are part of our assessment and the Track My Progress, and some of our teachers this year have been piloting a new assessment called STAR, and we will be giving more information about that as we go along. We're just in the pilot year. Our 504 and special education evaluations are ongoing as needed for any student who goes through the child find process, which is how we determine if a student qualifies for an individual education plan. Our expertise and professional development. I talked a little bit about this with the after-school program we have, offering the PD for our teachers. I said we're offering differentiated professional learning for our teachers this year, where there's some choice in some of their professional days. And the collaborative learning time I talked about, the days we have specific to specific topics every day throughout the week, throughout the whole SU. I'm going to share some highlights and how a little bit this relates to the middle school team that I work with. Up here, my first picture up here is the extended learning opportunity. Our students doing a field trip to Hartford Technical School. In the past, we thought a lot of getting our high school students ready for that. We're moving that down and getting our middle school students ready to think about what do they want to do in their careers as they get older, and prepping them a lot sooner than waiting until they're 9th graders or 10th graders when the junior and senior programs happen at Hartford Technical School. So it was a really exciting day for them. They love seeing the culinary programs, the health program, the early childhood program, and definitely the auto and welding. They loved it. And it drives their excitement to be thinking about how they're going to pursue this. What path do I want to get there if I want to do that when I'm a junior, or maybe even do that when I'm a 10th grader and get an exploratory kind of program as a 10th grade student at Hartford. Here we have middle school students doing one of their very first Leader in Me activities, which was very exciting. That is a group of students talking to Miss Carrie with her food services t-shirt on with her back to you in the picture. She helped them plan a menu and a special breakfast on the morning of one of our Track My Progress assessment days to make sure our kids had a good, healthy breakfast. They reminded them, this little committee reminded them to get good sleep that week, stay hydrated. And this is part of our Leader in Me, getting our students out there to speak about what they need, being leaders and putting more of the voice of the instruction, the teaching, the learning, the collaborating into our students' hands. And they did a beautiful job planning this event. They've planned an SU-wide dance where they've invited all the schools in the SU. They've planned they did 2 assessment breakfasts and the dance. They planned Winter Carnival for middle school, and they'll be planning some end of the year events. This is also occurring during their passion period, which is a big middle school push for us this year, and developing our middle school model. And our students have a period where they have choice, and this planning committee was one of those choices. Things like that the students wanted to do, like circuitry. We had some students doing podcasts. We have book groups. We had a crafting group at one point. We have our cross grade level events happening where we have book buddies going down to elementary grades. There's a lot of things happening in this passion period at the end of the day, and we keep asking our students for more input because as Kate said, we want to help them create their path of what they want and how they learn best. In the bottom right, one of our beginning of the year events was taking our whole middle school to the farm and wilderness field trip. We used it as a bonding, kicking off the school year to get to know our students and teachers better, and also a learning opportunity to do some of that outdoor place-based learning that they had science classes and water testing at the pond and brought that water back and tested it here and shared the results with their classmates and teachers. We had students doing reflective journaling in the woods when they were on that trip. So we brought all of their academics into that trip to also see that outdoor learning component. And the students spoke highly of it because there were no cell phones allowed, and they actually said at our school board meeting, it really was great that you made us not take our cell phones. We actually had to talk to each other and be face to face. And one of the things I noticed was there was some like teenage conflict. And I said, oh, this is how we work it out. We actually talk to people and look them face to face and work it out instead of texting them how we're feeling. So it was really exciting, and they were excited about not having their phones on that trip as well. Down here in the bottom left is a slide I just recently put in here, and this is a small group of students who our goal is to get more of their voice and get them on our school boards and get them really involved. And we're looking at a small interview committee of students who are looking to create a list of questions for an upcoming position that they would like to know about a teacher coming in. So super excited, taking it very seriously, and are looking forward to setting up kind of a mini meet and greet interview with a potential candidate coming into our school. So that's Leader in Me. One of the things all of us do with Leader in Me, we are all setting our wildly important goals in our district, in our schools, in our classrooms. In the middle school, in our building, it is ELA, citing evidence and helping in those areas where our students are a little bit lower in their test scores across Track My Progress and SBAC, but ELA scores in citing evidence in informational text and literature is what we're working on as a school-wide piece. And I think I've covered most of it. And I'm thankful that you're all here tonight. I'm going to pass this over to Jennifer.
All right, so we started at the 30,000 view. Now we're going to move ourselves down from 30,000 to 10,000 to the on the ground. Now we're going to talk about the reality of learning, which is learning is a unique individual event. Nobody can do learning for another person. So when we talk about that, one of the things we have become more and more aware of over the last 50 years is what is required for learning to actually occur. And when we think about how schools have changed, what they're facing now, what our families are facing, what our communities are facing, it's very different and has evolved over quite a period of time. And if you think even 100 years ago, the world that we lived in was quite different from the world we live in now. The world we lived in 25 years ago was quite different. In fact, 2007 brought us a huge change when we started using smartphones. And I'll talk about why this is important in just a moment. This all happened in the last 100 years from, basic automobiles to smartphones. Our evolution as human beings, however, spent thousands and thousands and thousands of years before that developing in a certain way of being in a community. So we as human beings grew up, we evolved over time to be safe amongst a small group of people that we really trust. The average group of people is around 25 to 30 people in what we would call a tribe. And when we were developing over those periods of time, we learned that as human beings, we are safer together. We need each other and we learn together. It used to be, even 50 years ago, if you were a child, you were probably a child who was taken care of by a lot of different adults. You were taken care of by your neighbors, by your aunts, by your uncles, by your older cousins, your older siblings. You then turned around when you got old enough and you started taking care of those who were younger than you. And that is how we as human beings are most successful. That is when our brains are at their best. And the last 50 years have seen an erosion of that. And while there's a lot of advantages that come, one of the costs happens to be how we function as human beings in terms of our sense of safety. And one of the things over the last 20 years that the evidence has shown us beyond a shadow of a doubt is that a child cannot learn unless they feel safe. A child cannot learn unless they feel like they are connected, unless they feel like they belong to a community. And so education is charged in our country of serving every child. And that started back in, 65? Was that, so anyway, rulings back, I think it was in the 60s, that said every child deserves equitable access to an education. And so when that happened, regardless of whether they're ready for learning, we have to do our job. Now, it's taken time to, first of all, understand what that means, and we're still learning. The research is ongoing, and it's robust at this point. And over the last, since 2007, when the smartphone really took over, how we started interacting as human beings is not congruent with how we need to be interacting as human beings. So where does that fall? Whose responsibility does that become? It's our community, right? We as a community need to address this, but schools have a responsibility to, no matter what a kid comes in with, we have to put them in a place where they are able to be successful. And a ton of language is out there now around trauma-informed care, what it is, around cycles of poverty, around cycle of the isms, sexism, racism, religious issues, right? There's a lot of things in which marginalizing another person has become the norm in so many areas. We as a school have to help to break those down. And so when we think about the increased costs over time, first of all, inflation is huge. We really have to think about the fact that schools are charged with a really enormous task. Because while parents are doing the best they can, often we now have what it used to be one child being taken care of by all these other children, aunts, uncles, grandparents, extended family, neighbors. Now you typically will have kids from very, very early ages, we're talking before they can have any control of themselves, are being taken care of 5, 6, 7, 8 by one adult. That's not how we were designed to grow. Nonetheless, we have to do our best to help kids access that. So a lot of the work that we are doing and have been doing, even pre-COVID, was really to help our children develop a sense of connection, develop a sense of belonging, develop a sense of safety. When COVID struck, that really highlighted across the nation, in fact, across the world, that we need to work on this. And luckily for us, we already had to jump on that, which is fantastic, but it's not an easy task. There's no easy roadmaps already for it. So a lot of the work that we are doing is going into the best of the research, which takes a lot of weeding through the research, and then trying to figure out systems to put in place in order to support these things. And overall, our goals, as we've talked throughout this evening already, is really to provide access for everybody. So I'll read you that, what's that called? The comic in the corner. I'll paraphrase for you. So there's this guy cleaning off the steps going up to the school. And on the side, on your left-hand side as you're looking at it, I hope that's the left-hand side, there's a ramp. And one person who's in a wheelchair says, how about you clean off the ramp? And the guy who's shoveling says, no, I've got to clean off the stairs for everybody else. This is often the way education has worked for a long time. We are working to build the ramps. We are working to clean off the ramps first so everybody, because you don't have to go upstairs, you can go up a ramp, right? So that's what we think about when we think about developing, designing curriculum that is accessible to everybody. So this is our big task, our big challenge, and I wanted to give you an idea of what that looks like for us, because most of us are pretty familiar with the academic standards. Most of us grew up in places where we took a math class, we took an ELA class, we took science, social studies. We might have even been fortunate to have an art class or a dance class or a music class. What we didn't have at that time, most of us, did not have a strategic approach to helping build our sense of community, our sense of safety, and it wasn't necessary as much as it is now, because we used to have a lot of mitigating factors. Those mitigating factors are people. Research says by Bruce Perry, who's an expert in childhood trauma, did some research, and they said in 1950, a child by the time they were 5 years old had a certain amount of one-to-one human interactions. In 2012, when this research came out, guess how old we needed to be before we had that same number of one-to-one human interactions? Any guesses? It was 5 back in 1950, one-to-one human interactions. No takers?
15.
15. Keep going.
20.
17 years old. By the time our kids are leaving high school, they will have had as many one-to-one human interactions as we used to in 1950. And even that is an erosion of what we used to have when we would live in tribes. So our brains are not catching up with the development of technology. So we are doing our best to create opportunities and being very mindful and purposeful of teaching kids how to be, because we no longer have the 7-year-old teaching the 5-year-old who's teaching the 3-year-old. That's not the way our homes are working anymore. That's not the way our communities are working anymore. So we are having to put that into school in order to make it so it's successful for all of our kids. So we have different structures in place. Everything we try to do is through a trauma-informed lens. And that requires us to continually learn and keep up with the research about it. It also requires us to be mindful of our own responses to things. So a child having a hard day or another person using a loud voice, how does that change how I'm now going to turn around and act on you? So it takes a lot of self-reflection in this process, which is part of our ongoing growth. All right, so a little bit of the numbers here are our current enrollments that we're projecting for next year. They're fairly stable. You guys are rough, right? Our bridge is going up a bit. We have wonderful communities. We want to find ways to continue to support them and bring more of our young families in. That's a bigger problem than schools have the answers to. So a little bit about Albert Bridge. It's a small school. We anchor a lot into this belief that we need to be working together across age bands. And so we have a lot of multi-age opportunities and developing the leadership capacity. So here we have a 3rd grader reading to a kindergartner. This creates relational bonds. It helps with reading. And believe it or not, it actually decreases things like challenging behavior, which we love. We do a lot of outdoor work. We're very fortunate in West Windsor to be close to nature, very easily accessible. We do a lot of work outdoors, and a lot of that work is collaborative. It is community-based. It is skill-based while they have fun outdoors, while they create something engaging. We do a lot across the board. We do a lot with numbers. So we look at data. One of the things that we're very fortunate over these last couple of years is to get somebody who's a real expert at pulling data together for all of our schools. And so we use that. So right now across our schools we have what we call wildly important goals. And we don't have a lot of them. In fact, we really have one, which is to improve foundational reading. That's our wildly important goal across our supervisory union. So all we do throughout the day thinks about how are we going to help build that. This happened to be a day of play where we let kids play with each other. And amazingly enough, they did not stay in their age cohort. They had 6th graders working with kindergartners, 3rd graders working with 5th graders, and they would move throughout the day. We have a lot of student voice in our schools. This is one of the examples of student voice. So this is recess time, believe it or not. The kids didn't want to go outside. They decided they wanted to make some choices. We put our goals out there for recess, which is to be able to work together and get some energy out. They created a dance party. So we have dance parties every day at school during recess time. We believe that when a student or a child feels like they are connected to their community, they are much more likely to, first of all, learn, understand the relevance, feel competent, and connected to their community. So we use place-based as our framework over at Albert Bridge. We access our community supports. This is kids being at AO. Windsor does the same thing. They get to go over to Escutney Outdoors, do some skiing. When it comes to talking about things like elections and voting and government, what do? We put real option out there for them to do some voting. So that dance party you saw was a voting process. This is a voting process. They're checking in, and the goal was to vote on, this was the plow, the snow plow. I don't know if you guys have heard of this awesome thing, but the state allows you to vote on snow plows and give them names. And then they go vote, personal voting, right? It's monitored by somebody. And then in the end, we come up with a real thing, right? We have the Snow Wars won the snowplow for Albert Bridge School. So when we talk about place-based, this is about doing the real thing. So they didn't learn about voting from a book. They learned about voting by voting. They learned about voting by getting something real, whether it's a dance party for recess or Snow Wars on the local plow that comes by. So all this to say that as we think about moving forward, the cost of education is expensive. I think the cost of not doing it well is going to, in the end, be much more expensive. We have been very fortunate to be in a remarkable community that supports children, that supports the teachers who are doing their very best to support those children, a community that supports the parents who are doing their very best to support those children. And we know that when we have a strong community around those children, they're going to do better. So before I pass this over to Elizabeth, I'm just going to pause us here. Does anybody have general questions on what we have presented so far? And we're always available. I mean, all of us are easily accessible. Email, call, stuff in the school. Yeah.
I would just ask for each of the schools, what is your greatest challenge right now as a school?
You want to jump in a greatest challenge as a school?
I'll jump in and say we have had last year positions in our budget and people who've left and trying to rehire. We don't have applicants. We don't have people filling our positions. We have a staff shortage. So I would say that's the biggest challenge.
Strong staffing.
Staffing shortage.
Yeah, and I would also put in there particularly around mental health. It's a huge deficit right now. They're missing 2 school counselors right now. We missed one last year, so we do some sharing. But the needs of our children, in order to access their learning, their academics, they have to be, their brain cannot be in the amygdala or the hippocampus. It has to be in the prefrontal cortex. You can't skip it. You can't be dysregulated. You can't be disconnected. In order to do good learning, in order to hit the smart part of our brain or the wizard part of our brain, we can't have the lizard part of our brain overactive. You have to be regulated. You then have to connect. Again, Bruce Perry's work shows this beyond a shadow of doubt. First regulate, then be connected and relating, then you can do the smart learning, which is what we think about when we think about organized skills, when we think about math, when we think about reading, when we think about science, when we think about problem solving. These all require the smart part of our brain or the top part of our brain, which was the last part of our brain to develop physically as individuals as we grow. It's also the last part of our brain to develop as human beings over the long haul. And that's just the way the brain works. There's no getting around it. There's no skipping it. It doesn't happen. So we have to honor that. So I think I would echo it's definitely staff shortages because what we're trying to do is, I think, something that has never been done before as a world, right? We're all trying to address some issues that are becoming more and more apparent to us as we're trying to catch up and close that gap between how our brains evolved and how technology has jumped us forward.
Oh, no, I was just wondering if you discussed the issue about staff shortages and I'm sure you have talked about ways that you can deal with that, and is it just there aren't enough people out there?
Yeah, to an extent. There's a staff shortage across the country. So if you think about the baby boomer generation, a lot of teachers work until they're 70, 71, 72. A lot of it's a passion they have, and it's a job that a lot of people can do. You get really good at it over time. If you think about the baby boom generation, there was already going to be a huge gap the moment they left, right? And a lot of them were holding on a little longer. They're into their later 60s and early 70s. COVID hit, and even those who were in the younger ages of the baby boomer, a lot of them said, this is not something I'm ready to take on. This is too much all at once, and we had a mass exodus across the country. And we have not had the same kind of influx in people coming to schools at this point in like colleges to become teachers for a couple of reasons. One is because this is hard work. It doesn't pay the way it does in other countries, right? It's not viewed as a valuable thing as it is in other countries. And there are a lot more easily accessible things that you can make a lot more money than not one is hard at, right? So I think there's a lot of, there's a huge gap into who's going into teaching and this mass exodus of who went out.
I'd like to thank you all. It sounds like you're all very passionate and doing a great job. And for just an average taxpayer that doesn't have a child in the system anymore, it's kind of difficult to keep abreast. And so, I mean, I'd like to see more community outreach for people that aren't connected. But I have a question that maybe you can't answer, but at the candidates forum last week I went and I heard for the first time that next year there's the first time in the system that a grade school student from either Albert Bridge or Windsor is going to have the ability to transfer. And could you tell me how that's going to work? What if the whole first grade wanted to go to Albert Bridge? So there's got to be some sort of system.
There is. So actually we started it last year. This is the first full year that we've had this in place, and we've looked into other areas, other places that have done this kind of work where they have just kind of this ability to do some school choice. And so we have some real strict regulations about who has priority. If you're in that town, you have first priority. We have caps on our classes, so we can't go over a certain number of kids in each class. So if, let's say, a lot of Albert Bridge students want to come to West Windsor, and they don't have the capacity here, we have to say no. At the same time, we're going to say, well, there's something going on really awesome at Windsor right now that we want to try and tap into, and how can we share that knowledge? So one of it is trying to figure out ways that we share the best of it while still offering different approaches. So like last year, we had 7 people take advantage of the interdistrict choice. And we didn't have to turn anybody away last year, luckily. I think if we get to a point where it's too many people, we're going to have to sit down and have hard conversations about kind of how we can support our families, how we can support our schools to provide what it is people are looking for.
And obviously, if you've had a child in the school, that parents know about this.
So last year when we put it out, it was, I want to say maybe June. This year we put it out in January. So we developed it over a period of time. We came to the conclusions in June and tried to get it out, and we got it out. We emailed to all the families who have kids that were already in the system or anybody we knew coming in.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions first, right?
I just want to piggyback on something that was asked, and that's around, okay, so we have this shortage of staff. You know, what are we thinking about, or are there any ideas on the table that are maybe helping us think about how do we try and address that shortage? Because, as you said, it's national, and it's not going to go away. So
It's not going to go away.
next year, we're going to still have to, educate our kids.
Can I start a little bit?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, one of the things we did, and I would say Ms. Ahern, our Director of Special Education, kind of started us in this shift when we started the shortage with COVID happening, was we said we have to be flexible. We've got some parents at home who want to come in and help us and could be some support staff members. And when she said we need to offer them flexible hours, we got some takers. And I think our HR and our team would like to build on that of like giving flexibility to our community members who know our students, because we know that the trauma training we've had and consistency and people our kids know is really important. Miss Sandy, our school crossing guard, says, I'll sub any day you want. And I'll start any day. So we have these people that our students know really well and want to support us. So Katie said we have to be flexible for these parents and the people who want to join us. So I think we'd like to build on that with our HR director and kind of find ways to bring people in to know what the benefits are of our school. Like what do you get in for PD money? How could we help you go back to school? How can we offer you mentorships? How can we help you with
tests and grades and schoolwork if you're going to go to Castleton or UVEI and become a teacher or a support staff member. So I think those are some of the things, like being flexible and being supportive. Because what I'd really like to say about being supportive and dealing with the shortage so far is that building the relationships and being supportive and being a true team member is the way all the teachers and the staff here are making these shortages happen. All these amazing things you're seeing are still happening with those shortages because teachers are taking on a lot. And Christine says it to us all the time. Some days I'm going to have more to give, and some days I'm going to have less to give, and we help each other. So that's one of the ways.
Piggyback quickly. Thanks for the shout out, Colleen. The other, we're trying to work towards formalizing some of what we've done with our specialized support staff who may have licenses that have lapsed or are in school or have alternate ways of getting licensure in Vermont. And we've supported several over the past couple of years, one just over COVID break, to get her license. And so that, starting small that way, we've been able to, with building relationships with people. We are trying to build that further. There's some options, and we've hopefully by the middle of next year we have something in place. But it involves some partnerships with higher education. It involves some pretty creative scheduling. And the other is specifically in special education. We're working with the state mentoring program to keep the people we have. So that's the other. It's not only getting people in, but keeping the people we have and improving our mentoring of staff has proven to be one of the biggest indicators to keep staff. So we follow and we put an investment in some teacher leaders that are working with our special education staff to do that too.
When we hire people, they love to hear we have a mentor program and that there's room to grow as a leader.
And we support them. That we want them here, that this is their school, their community, and be wrapped around. Make sure they want to stay and want to be a part of all these things.
So that's some of what we're doing. It's a chronic problem across the country. It goes deep. So some of it's grow your own, some of it's loan forgiveness programs, some of it's, I've heard of a couple of community colleges who are actually paying students to go to school because they can't afford to go full-time, so they're going part-time and have to work part-time. So instead of having them work part-time, the school's actually paying them to go to school full-time to get them through quickly so that they can grow the workforce. Some of the bigger issues that contribute are we don't have housing. So even if you get a job, you can't find an affordable place to live in our region, in the Northeast. It's really hard. Childcare is another problem. For many people, it's a barrier. So there's lots of things at the state level that people are working on. I believe if we build a culture in our schools where people feel valued, appreciated, empowered, part of the decision-making process, they feel positive, they want to be here, we're going to attract them and they're going to stay. So that's one of the things we're doing. But we don't have all the answers yet. There are lots and lots of things coming in our inboxes around workshops for just this issue. So
I would just like to add another one of the grow your own is that we've talked about having kind of a job fair for our seniors. We've talked to the board about this. We have students who are getting their LNA certification at Hartford and know that there is an LNA position available and have already reached out as a high school senior saying, this is something I'm interested in for next year. We have 2 support staff members who are recent graduates. 3 others, a couple others have interviewed and didn't take the positions, but we had people who knew before they graduated last year. I know the culture of the school. I know support staff who've helped me get through school. I'm interested in working at that school. So another goal is to start it earlier, like Christine said, with our high school students. But there's positions here, and here are some ways we can help you through school.
Thank you for that. I love the teamwork because I answered part of the question. And when stress happens, like you don't have access to all of your brain, so like you're worried about stuff. So thank you guys for covering that. And I also do want to say that part of the budget is about raises, right? We gave our teachers raises so they had some equity in the region. Now, we're certainly not the best paid. We still got people who are willing to go, 2 towns over and get, a huge bump in pay. But we still made ourselves competitive, and that's really a kudos to the teachers and the board working together to find that out. But it does show up in our budget. Other questions before we jump to the numbers? Okay, so before we jump to the numbers, we got to read some articles, which Justin's going to take up for us.
I'm going to ask Justin now that we're getting.
Sure.
We thought we'd be really informal tonight, so there obviously were some barriers that we didn't anticipate, but this is important. Not
Okay.
that it wasn't
Yes,
called
of
for,
course.
but.
All right, great. Is everybody comfortable? Do you want me to see if I can get the fan turned on again? No? All right. My name is Justin Burrows. I'm the moderator for the annual district meeting for Mount Ascutney School District. I'm going to go ahead and read the warning here. Mount Ascutney School District, warning for the annual district meeting. The legal voters of the Mount Ascutney School District are hereby notified and warned to meet in person on Wednesday, March 1st, 2023 at 6 p.m. to transact the following business that does not involve voting by Australian ballot. Such meeting shall be adjourned to Tuesday, March 7th, 2023 in the forenoon at the Windsor Municipal Building on Union Street, Windsor, Vermont, and Story Memorial Hall, West Windsor, Vermont, to transact any business involving voting by Australian ballot. There are now 8 articles in this warning. They are all the first 7 are to be voted by Australian ballot. I'm going to read them individually and then ask if you have any questions for each of the items. When we get to the Article 7, which actually has the budget numbers, I think we're going to then take a small break there to go through a presentation in detail of the numbers, and we'll be able to entertain questions to that there. Yes, sir.
Before you start on reading the articles, can I ask a question about the warning?
Yes.
I know that it's in the town report here, the warning, and it was also in the paper, but state statute says that the time, the date, and the location, and it says that the meeting's going to be adjourned and go, but it never really said that this meeting would be here. And then along with the fact that it didn't say that, when some of us assumed it was here, when you come in the way we've done for 30 years, the back door was locked. So I think that if it's a legal warning, which I question, it's at least not done very well.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Are there any other questions before I commence to the reading of the articles? All right. Article 1, to appoint a moderator, clerk, and treasurer for the ensuing year by Australian ballot. Article 2. Yes, sir.
Who's running?
I don't know. I don't know that anybody's running. It's going to be voted on by Australian ballot. I don't think anybody's listed.
We don't know who the candidates are.
There are no candidates.
No candidates. Do you want to run one?
Are you going to be moderator again?
If I'm appointed, I will do it. Sorry, back to any other questions on Article 1? Okay. Article 2, to act on the reports of the school district officers for the past year by Australian ballot. Any questions? Okay. Article 3, to see if the Mount Ascutney School District will vote to pay taxes to the town treasurer, such taxes to be collected on the same schedule voted at the town meeting by Australian ballot. Any questions on that? Okay. Article 4, to elect the school directors for the ensuing term by Australian ballot. Windsor residents at the Windsor Municipal Building on March 7th, 2023 from 9 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. West Windsor residents at Story Memorial Hall on March 7th, 2023 from 9 a.m. and close at 7 p.m.
Do we know who the candidates are?
They would be, so the question is, who are the?
The candidates are Nancy Pedrick for West Windsor,
that contested, or are there two seats available?
There's one seat available for Windsor.
So two
with
people
two
are running for
candidates.
it,
Yeah,
and Nancy's running for the one seat in West Windsor.
yeah. And all people from Windsor and West Windsor can vote on all of the candidates.
Article 5, or excuse me, are there any more questions on Article 4? Okay. Article 5, to establish salaries for school directors, school board chair, $1,250 per year, and school board members, $1,000 per year by Australian ballot. Are there any questions? Article 6, to see if the Mount Ascutney School District will vote to authorize the Board of School Directors to borrow money in anticipation of taxes to meet the requirements of the Mount Ascutney School District for the ensuing year, and to authorize the execution and delivery of notes or orders to the Mount Ascutney School District by Australian ballot. Okay. And for Article 7, you want me to read Article 7 and then do the presentation? Okay. Then you do the present. We'll break then for the presentation. Article 7. Shall the voters of the Mount Ascutney School District approve the school board to expend $13,716,349, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $20,214,000. Oh, sorry. I had to. Yeah, don't. Sorry. Do I have to start over from the beginning on that one, or can I start on this sentence? Okay. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $20,214.52 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 16.5% higher than the spending for the current year by Australian ballot. And at that, I'm going to move it to the numbers presentation, and then we can have the questions following that.
Ed. Okay. Right, there we are. I'm really going to keep this very brief. Our district's actual spending budget has increased by 3.55%, rounding up to 3.6%, which of the money being asked represents 7 cents. Our common level of appraisal, which is an annual estimation of whether our town's grand list matches the common market level for real estate. In West Windsor, our common level of appraisal, so if the common level of appraisal number goes down, that means that our properties are estimated lower than the actual market value of them. So in West Windsor, the common level of appraisal went down 12% to roughly 79%. And in Windsor, the common level of appraisal went down 6% to 86%. That means that that causes our taxes, it's part of the education funding formula, and it causes our taxes to rise, unfortunately. Other factors that have influenced the actual equalized pupil rise in spending include spending on our student mental health needs, the grand list values, as I said. Last year, we had a huge budget surplus, and we decided to spend half of the budget surplus on things that we thought would help our schools run better, and the other half we returned to taxpayers to buy down the actual tax increase from last year. We don't have that this year, and so that means that our revenues, which offset the expenditures, are down this year, and we don't have a surplus to buy the tax rate down this year. We also have seen a 30% rise in fuel costs, which actually is so big that it has been a big factor in our budget this year. And as Jennifer said, we did include salary and benefit raises so that we could compete with other districts in our area so that we can try to fill some of those vacant positions. And then we've also had an increase in the administrative budget, specifically in the areas of early childhood education, which is a good thing because it means that we have more early childhood children, and also in special education. And so the projected tax rate for West Windsor is $1.66, which is up roughly 14%. And in Windsor, it's $1.51, which is up roughly 7%. And that's all I've got. Does anybody have any questions? I am positive that you must. Yes, Sherry.
So the question I emailed you earlier today, when you put that together with the town budget increase, what are Windsor residents looking at in terms of the increase in taxes?
I'm sorry, can you ask the last part?
Sure. When you put the school budget together with the town budget,
Yep.
what is the total increase for Windsor residents?
The
Or
total-
West Windsor residents?
The total increase, wait a minute. It's up 7% and 14% respectively, but let me see if I think it's on page 21 of this.
Elizabeth, I don't think we can answer that because we don't know what the town budgets are. So she's asking like cumulatively, right?
Yeah, it's 3.9
Oh.
with the town. The town budget is up by 3.9.
That doesn't mean that the town tax rate's gonna go up that amount, though, because it's not calculated on the same formula
Right.
as the education tax rate. So, I don't think we have that data.
Yeah, it would be helpful, I think, for people who are voting and when we used to get together
Yeah.
as a school district and the town meeting together, you know, they had that information for residents.
West Windsor's budget's going up about a little over 5%. Now, I don't know what the rate's going to be.
It's also,
It depends on what the grand list has changed. The grand list has grown, so the tax rate's not going to go up that much.
we also the school district is a separate municipality from the two towns. So it's like a third budget.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I read in here about the 85% is what triggers the
Yep.
out of 3-year average.
Yep.
So who's responsible for reappraising the town? Is that the state's responsibility? Is it the town's responsibility?
It's the select
or is it
board's.
the school's responsibility?
It's the select board's responsibility.
So it's
and-
not even
Actually, it's
in
the
your
lister's
privy of that?
Yeah,
It's the lister's responsibility.
Right.
If you have, Windsor has its own appraiser, I think, so which means it's probably the select board.
Well, I also read.
West
the
Windsor
state-
has a reappraisal. on
I
the-
read the state's in the process that want to take over control of it, but they only have 5 people in the state to do it. So
I
I
don't.
just wondered, I mean, I imagine the way the influx of real estate that has changed hands in the last few years. I bet that every town in the state of Vermont.
That's right, that's right. And I know that as a legislator, I know that in both the House and Senate, they're working on lowering that, but I didn't mention it because it hasn't happened.
Right.
So I don't want to project, who knows? I just heard that on Tuesday, and I don't know whether that'll come to fruition or not, what the yield is.
If I can add, just, the reason the state is thinking of taking over doing it is because, I don't know how long it's been going on, but the state has a fund they collect from a fee that they use to reimburse towns for their reappraisal.
I read that.
So even though the select board requests an appraisal, they then get reimbursed by the state for the cost of it. The state, now realizing that all these towns need reappraisals, is saying, why are we telling you to ask for a reappraisal when we're going to end up paying the bill anyway? We as a state should simply just pay the bill and order the reappraisals. But as you said, there's only 5 people or whatever that are, there's limited numbers of people who are qualified to do an official reappraisal. So.
And the truth is that I haven't heard anything about the state actually acting on any of that. So that's all conjecture as far as I'm concerned, since we certainly haven't had a bill in the House about it. So, yes. It is a possibility, but I don't know whether it's a strong possibility because we are 3 separate municipalities. We really come out with our budget. We have a different budgeting cycle, and we have a different report cycle, town report cycle, and we could work on it. But they're really separate. Because we're now one district of the 2 towns, they're really totally separate. That's why we don't have the same. What's that?
It has the school and town figures on it. So.
Yeah, I don't have an answer right now, but I will look into it for you. Yep.
I don't understand on Article 7, that last sentence, the projected thing for people is 60% higher than the last year. It seems really excessive. Does that mean you compare it to this other page here, where it says it was only 7.6% higher than the previous year?
So part of the do you know what equalized pupil spending means? Okay. It's spending that's weighted using several different factors, but it weights the amount that it costs to educate each pupil. So high school students cost more to educate than pre-K students. So we look at all of the students in our district, and then we add different weights. In fact, next year we're going to add different weights because the state passed a new weighting system last year. And then they come up, just to simplify it, then they come up with a number of how many students that really means. In our district, the number of students that really means was reduced by 19 students. We have 19 fewer equalized pupils this year than last year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it is in a small district. So that's part of the reason that it went up as much as it did. It is high. It is high. I acknowledge that. But as you can see, with a 3.5 or 3.6% increase, it's not really because of the budget that we've presented.
That is in that area where it talks about, the budget.
Yep.
When you come to vote on it, you see the 16.
Yep.
It's better than there.
Yeah.
It'll be gone next year, the rules voted to take that out, but it was after the warning was already done, so. Yeah, because it is confusing for people, obviously.
Yeah. Yes.
In the town report on the articles last year, Article 7, Bill the Massachusetts School District authorized the board to apply $624,526 to the capital reserve, and then you
Yep.
explained earlier that even though the town voted to put it in the capital reserve, the school board decided to lower the tax burden and take some of it out.
We use the capital reserve to
Right, so didn't-
buy it down.
So it didn't all go, so I guess my question is, how much, is there any, what do we have in the capital reserve fund right now?
I am gonna defer to Ed.
How much are in the capital reserve out of the surplus?
What's the current balance of
Did we put the whole 625,000 into it?
Yep.
last year?
Yep.
So if there was zero before that, it might be zero now, right? Is it possible to take that out, or is it a year-to-year basis? I mean, if after the voters voted to put it in capital reserve and the school board decided, no, we're gonna reduce taxes, is it possible to dive into that and reduce taxes again? Or is it a year-to-year thing?
It's possible, but it's not proven.
Well, I know, I know, maybe you could explain that part of the reason the tax is going up to 20,000 per pupil now is because we took that fall.
Yeah, you had, can you bring this up?
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm not suggesting
Are you sure?
it's true, I'm just asking if it's possible.
It's not very clear.
Explain what page it's on in the book, Jennifer.
It's on page, what, 24?
So we had page 21, then go past 21 to, what's it say?
It's here, and that is,
Maybe the page back, let's see if we can find that. If you can find the page that says Mount Scottney School District, big white page, like the back side of it, annual meeting section,
it's the page before.
just go back a page.
Yeah, so what's up on the screen right now is the same thing as you have in your hand. So when you're looking at that, in the upper, you'll see across the top, there's FY21, FY22, FY23, and FY24. And at the line 1 on this sheet, it says adopted warning or Union School District. So those are the budget numbers, okay? So if you go across the top, in FY21, the budget was $11,905,458. If you go all the way to the right, the proposed budget for FY24 is $13,640,282. Now, that differs from what is in the warning, because in West Windsor, there was a special act passed back in 2003 that allowed them to raise money outside of the ed fund. So that money is not included in this. So the 13,640,282 is reduced by the amount of money that's raised outside the formula, which is $76,000 in 2024. And what that money was used for is the town of West Windsor raised money outside of the ed fund to fund a school renovation. And there were two towns that took advantage of it, us and I think Stratton, but I can't remember the other one. So that's why there's a difference in the number for 24. It's reduced by the Act 144 money. But that's the budget that we're going to put into the formula. And if you go down, as you move down the lines, you get to line 6, and it's still 13,642.82 because none of the obligations that are allowed in this up above that pertain to the Mount Scottney School District. The next box you see, and that's box number 9, is $1,567,788. 768, I'm sorry. That's what they consider to be local revenue. And what local revenue is tuition in Mount Scottney's case, and any surplus or deficit that you have in the year prior, the last fiscal year ending. And that means in this case, any surplus or deficit from FY22 would be put into FY24's budget. So now this year, we're putting in a deficit of $14,000, okay? If you go back to 23 on line 9, and you look at the 2,362,598, that number included what David was alluding to, this $624,000 in surplus from 21. So just to reiterate, in 23, the year we're in, the school board applied $624,000 in prior year revenue to offset the increase. And if you look at the total amount of the budget, the increase from 2022 to 2023 was 12.73%. And the districts, by using the $624,000, that lowered the tax rate significantly. When you got into 24, you don't have that money. In fact, you have a deficit. So you go from line 9 again, $2,362,000 to $1,567,000, right? So that means that between the deficit, the lack of the 624, and the lowering of tuition, we're at about a $724,000 difference in local revenue between 23 and 24. And now what happens then is you get down to line 11, what they're doing is they're taking the 13 million, we're still on FY24, taking the 13,640,000, you're subtracting out the 1.567, and in line 11, the ed spending, the number you start with is 12,072. So it's 13,640 less 1.567 equals 12,072,514. Then the next number down below in line 12 is equalized pupil. Okay? So the equalized pupil number is down 21 from FY23, it was 619 or 618.99 to 597.22. Okay? So how we come up with the ed spending per equalized pupil is you take the equalized pupil number and you divide it into the budget, the 12,072,514. That's where you come up with the 20,214.52. And if you look back to 23, you can see that the number that you're starting with, the denominator is 10,740,275, and you're dividing 618,000 in, so you can see the difference. You've got a lower number in the total budget, and you've got a higher number in equalized pupil. That's why you get the 17,351.29. So that's why there's a huge increase. Because you had less money in local revenue and you had less equalized pupils.
I
count?
I believe if we go to, in the book, they showed 2022, 23.
That's around page 20.
There's no page, 19, 20, 21. So on that page at the top, there's a whole bunch of statistics there. And in 22, 23,
It's right after page 20.
right.
Some people go to the movies, I come to these things to ask their question.
So to answer your question, in 21, 22, you can see the counts. So at the end, the last count in fiscal year 22 was 604 people, and the count as of 1/17, January 17th of this year, was 597. So it's pretty close. You can see what happens is the weighting factor raised the level in equalized pupils. So if they were going to use the actual, it would have been 604, but what they used in last year was 618.
So, okay, so
Yeah.
that's your, because of the change with the weighting, we're not even sure what that.
Well, that'll be next year's budgeting process, but no, we don't know what it is.
Yeah, but it'll be different than the weighting process.
And we've had a break from the spending cap for, I think this is year 2 of this break?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's enough, next year we'll have one more year. I don't think
We're
this
introducing
district has
something.
ever exceeded the spending cap, but,
If you look at the sheet, what she's referring to is on line 23 of the sheet I handed out. There's,
it's teensy.
yeah, the spending cap, if it was being enforced this year, is 22,204.
No, it's equal to the next line down.
Now that's the threshold, 22,204.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd be under it this year. And anything that's listed in the yellow boxes above it, those are used to lower the number. But again, it's been suspended for this year, and it's up to the legislature will change its mind every 10 minutes, so that they could suspend it even further.
But I'm not sure I understand, but last year the absolute count was 604, but the weighted ended up being 618.
Yeah, so we're looking at, that's the FY22 year, right? So FY22 was 633. So the actual count that I have for FY22 is 604. Okay?
You're beyond my pay grade.
No. If you look, so we're talking fiscal years. It goes June to July. So if you look at this sheet here, right? When we go down to line 12 under FY22, right? it's 633.03, okay? And if you go to the chart in the town report, or the district report, for FY22, the 21-22 school year, it's, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, it's 604. Yeah. So for FY22, the actual count was 604. The equalized pupil number was 633.
Because of the weights.
Yeah, so 597 up to 619.
Right. So for 23, right, we're looking at, they gave us 618.99. The actual count as of 117 was 597. We don't know where it's going to end at the end of the year. But the CLA, or excuse me, the equalized pupil number historically is a little bit higher. Then again, and the other part of this is that when I show you this sheet here, and you look up at the very top, it says property dollar equivalent yield. It's highlighted with, in yellow, it says 15,479. The last 3 years, the legislature has changed that number dramatically. So what I've done is I've projected my tax rates based on that number, and that number was what came from the Vermont Department of Taxes. But the legislature has gone in and changed that. Last year it changed it a lot. So it does affect the tax rates. What I'm giving you is a projected tax rate. It doesn't necessarily mean that after the session that it won't go up or down. Yes, David.
So, even though in the morning it says that our equalized pupil is 16.50% higher than last year, we're still a couple of $1,000s below the threshold.
Right.
Huh?
Yep.
Okay, so you should tell people that, because it looks a lot worse than, and the 16.5% is what I'm telling people, because I'm scrutinizing it. It's, you know, if there was a letter written in the paper saying 16.5%, and
Budget
it's really
increase.
only 3.5%.
That's right.
Which it looks a lot worse than.
Yep. Yep.
Good job, Mr. Ed.
Oh, thank you.
Any questions for Ed before he walks away?
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
Anybody else? We're supposed to vote on this now. No, that's it. Okay, does anybody?
So we have to,
Oh,
and do we have to make that correction
Yes.
here?
yes. Let me, can you stand over here because it doesn't reach us?
I know. I don't want to walk through you.
Can I have a question? The very first article, it says they're voting for clerk and treasurer, but there's nobody's name there.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Look on the page before.
Does it?
Look on the page before it, and you can see the warning from the previous.
Yeah, but
That's what the ballot looked like last year, and that you'll see that there wasn't anybody on there then either.
So it's a write-in campaign.
It's a write-in campaign. If you know somebody,
Willing to be moderator again next year, is that right?
anybody,
I'm treasurer, but asked by the, and that would be really complicated if someone else became, because we assign
yeah.
things forever. So, vote for me. Treasurer.
But as you may remember, it was left blank. Nobody received any votes, and then we just then at our reorganizational meeting,
Yeah.
we
Good, okay.
we wrestled over who was going to have to do it.
Okay, hearing no further questions on Article 7, I'm going to move on to Article 8, to transact any other business which may properly come before the meeting. Any questions or comments or anything on that? Okay, hearing none, I don't need a motion, so barring any other comments, I'm going to adjourn until Tuesday, March 7th, where you can vote at the Windsor Municipal Building on Union Street in Windsor, Vermont, and the Store Memorial Hall in West Windsor, Vermont. All right, thank you.